Welcome to the April Home and School meeting. Thanks everyone for joining us. We're actually going to get started right away because we do have a couple people who have obligations right after or at 7 o'clock. So we want to make sure we start moving through things. So let me just pull up slide deck and let everyone see. This meeting is being recorded, just so you know, and it will be added to our YouTube for you to reference later, or if you can't stay for the whole meeting or have any of other people who would like to view it. So we will have it up in, probably by early next week. So again, welcome. There will be a sign-in sheet in the chat soon, so just make sure to fill that out for us. And yeah, I think I should be screen sharing now. If I'm not, someone please let me know. Okay, so this is our agenda tonight. We do have Dr. Soda joining us again. We're really grateful for that. I know we had Dr. Soda join us in October, and it was very relevant to our seniors who were going through the application process at that moment for college and really planning for what they were doing. They graduate in a couple months, but we now know that our juniors and even some of our sophomores are thinking about post-secondary planning. And this information is always relevant to all families, so we really appreciate having a second opportunity to have this session. So I am going to pass it over to Dr. Soto.
Thank you. Good evening. I just want to give a nod. President Davis, my meeting was pushed back till about 7:15. I know you have a little one at home. Did you want to
Oh,
go
I
or?
appreciate that, Dr. Soda. I'm okay. I
Okay.
appreciate that though.
All right, cool. Thank you. So welcome everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I see a lot of familiar faces, or last names at least, that I automatically connect to your students. So I appreciate you taking the time to be on the home and school meeting. And as Esther said, we were on in October of last year, yeah, presenting for seniors who will be graduating in I think 40 some days, or the kids have it, counted down. So that's exciting. I also am joined by Alana Chasen. She is one of the other counselors, and she will be fielding questions in the chat. And I don't know if any of the other counselors will hop on as well. So if you want to, ask questions, we'll sort of get to that at the end. There's no way for me to get through all of the information. So what I like to do is I like to do information heavy on the slides, and then you can have that for your reference. A couple observations just with our 285th class graduating, observations in terms of admission. And I feel like each year there's like little nuances that come out in terms of, what should I do for my student, or what should students do a little differently. The biggest piece would be financially. We only have, probably out of our 577 seniors, I would say about 200 of those kids who have officially committed, meaning paid their deposit and are going to the school. We're definitely seeing a lot of head scratches as it relates to affordability of school, financial aid. We are seeing financial aid cuts, in terms of the educational budget. So I don't say that to scare anybody. I say that to say it is even more important now to start the process early around trying to figure out where your child will want to apply. That never it's we are getting students accepted. We are getting students with merit-based scholarships, which is great, based on their, GPA and SATs. But more than ever, the conversations, meeting with juniors, starting to meet with juniors, and, have conversations with parents about affordability, not necessarily, can we afford it, but how will we afford it? Oftentimes we get to this year, and I just had sadly one earlier this week where, a parent had called, telling their student that they could go anywhere they wanted. And unfortunately, they had to backpedal a little bit because of, the financial gap. So if I have any advice, it's really important for juniors to start at least thinking about it now. And so we're going to be doing a webinar, hopefully. It's not on the calendar yet, but with our juniors. But I can say that individual appointments with counselors has already kicked off. So next slide. So this is just a breakdown. I represent a counseling team of 6 counselors, and we split the caseload by last name, student's last name. So you'll just see a list of our counselors and their email. If you have any questions directly, you can ask them. Next slide. So where do I begin? I know I mentioned, starting early, but it's like, well, so where do I go? 2 places in particular would be the Common Application. If you've had students, younger children who've gone through, Common App is still sort of the main application tool that's used by most students. I know if you go on, it says, that the Common App doesn't open until August 1st for rising seniors, but you can always go on. They have a tutorial where you can start to look up schools. You can, check out the Common App essay, which is a requirement to complete the application. So you could just sort of like poke around there if you wanted to. And then the other big piece, and this is a school district sponsored platform, is Zello. You may have heard it. We've had students complete various tasks that are required. 11th grade students are required to complete certain, personality inventory, how to build a resume, how to write a proper email, all those things that may seem sort of intuitive for our students, but in the age of social media and technology, it's not necessarily that they know how to do it. And so Zello will take students on, virtual tours of schools based on, an interest inventory. It'll plug in different, different sort of schools that they might look for. And some of the heavy hitter items, like where do we even start? I shy away from looking for schools necessarily to have the top major in engineering or business or anything like that. And because it's really about the students' fit, right? If we think about colleges and universities already established, their campuses are already there. Clearly, they're doing something right, right? Clearly, they're doing something right. The question becomes, as we as counselors support kids, is will what that school has to offer be a fit for the student? And so getting on campus could be important over the summer. Doing these virtual tours. I know the virtual tours, the kids roll their eyes when I say, just look at a virtual tour, see what's being offered, right? So how big is the school? Fraternities, sororities? Is it a research-based school if you're interested in science? Are there large lecture type classes, where there's 200 kids in a lecture hall, or is it sort of all professor based taught and that individualized attention? So the students know where Naviance was replaced by Zello. I saw a question pop up. It's very similar in terms of the information that can be found on there. So staying organized is another big piece. I always encourage students to start a Google Doc with me. I always encourage the parent to go on there. That way we can have sort of a running log of conversations. We can have running logs of, you and your child go on a visit, what you liked, what you didn't like. It just helps to keep one document that is sort of ongoing and fluid. A lot of students like Google Sheets, as long as there's an organizational tool that helps them make sense of the process. Google Classroom, we use Google Classroom to sort of promote college fairs, to promote, college rep sort of visits, to promote, fly-in programs where students can, fly to the school. I mentioned this a little bit ago about, the personal essay and supplementals. That can happen sort of, you could go on Common App, there's usually 5 prompts. And they're pretty standard. One is being sort of a topic of your choice. This can be helpful for students if they know early enough, because some students recycle. If they did a paper for an English class or a social studies class or any class, that they can somehow pull a topic or an idea and run with it for their personal essay. Colleges, as they become more selective, are not interested in sort of a repeat of a resume or of the application. So the application will ask, grades and things and all that good stuff, but they want to see something pop off the paper that will help them understand why they should accept your child to their school. Selecting schools. I talked a little bit about this earlier about getting on campuses early. You might hear different sort of ideas. I like to use FIT. I've been using it since I started as a counselor. So what is your child's fit, right? Because I know parents, are involved, counselors are involved, but it really has to fit the student. And parents, I don't mean to be offensive, but sometimes, working with parents, and parents have a completely different idea than what their young person wants, right? And so that's where sort of I come in to sort of figure out where the crossover is and how we can best support the student. So if I think of fit, I think about location. Do they want to stay East Coast? Do they want to go West Coast? Do they want to go international? Size, I talked about enrollment size. Do you want to stay at a school like Central, smaller, 2,400 students, or do you want to go to like University of Michigan with 15,000 undergraduate students? Many of our students are involved at Central, and so they want to continue on with that involvement, whether it's mock trial, whether it's DECA, whether it's LGBTQ plus, clubs and organizations, religious affiliation, academic, academic programs and things like that. Cost is huge. I thought about moving that to the beginning, but I don't want that to be a sole deterrent for students. Culture, major, are all important. I mentioned Zello. If you go into a Zello, you can access Zello. Parents don't have a direct sort of email to it. Your student can show you, and we encourage students to sit down with you and show you all the different sort of avenues available in Zello. They access, I don't know why I'm drawing a blank, through Infinite Campus under their message center. And they'll see everything seems to be like a Hollywood square. So they'll see Zello, XELLO in a box. They don't have to log in. There's no magic secret to get in. This question comes up, and I think I'm like showing my age when it comes to, how many schools should I apply to? When I was growing up and I went to a small Catholic school, it was like 6 to 8 schools to make it sort of manageable. We have students that apply to every school that gives them a fee waiver, which to me seems overwhelming. Now it's usually through the Common App. The Common App is what it is in terms of, filling out sections, a common application and then being able to press a button and have it go to multiple schools. So the Common App has made it a little easier in terms of, accessibility and kids being able to apply. When we think about reach, safety, and target, that, is another way to say sort of how can we help your student diversify their application types, right? And so when we talk about reach, safety, and target, what we're doing is we're comparing the student specs at Central, right? We're looking at SAT scores. We're looking at rigor of their classes. We're looking at the grades based on the rigor of their classes. And we're also looking at sort of overall GPA. So based on what your child has, where is that fitting as it relates to the admissions profile of the students who are currently attending that college or university, if that makes sense. So we really want to ensure that there's targets and safeties so that your student has somewhere that they will be able to call home. Oftentimes a reach, your student may be a couple points shy in terms of GPA or right under sort of the SAT sort of mark. And so I always encourage students, let's work together and figure out how to put your best foot forward and put the best possible application forward. And, some schools recognize that. I see more of our Ivies and our more competitive really sort of sticking to that admissions profile. But it does vary based on the school, what the student is majoring in, and things like that. Next slide, Esther. So Zello, I talked a little bit about, just to sort of dive in a little deeper. Your student, when they return as a senior, so they're rising juniors, I'm speaking more specifically to rising juniors, although for parents with students in 9th and 10th grade, this process most likely will be the case when your student gets to the fall of their junior year. Zello, in addition to being sort of like a college exploratory sort of platform and trade school platform and military employment, there's like different strokes for different folks in terms of like what your student might be interested in. The other side of the house is where the adults support your child's application. Okay. When I say adults, I mean myself as their counselor. So they would make requests for me to do it. I would be the one to write their recommendation letter. Central High School kind of has a school profile that has to go, which basically are the highlights of Central in terms of what we offer to students, the type of school that we are as a criteria-based school in Philadelphia, how students are accepted there. And then, some knowledge, some information about, our sports teams or extracurricular teams and some extracurricular clubs and some of the highlights to those programs. Our job as adults is to support your student's application. So Common Application will take care of your student actually applying. And Zello is where the adults will upload their teacher recommendations, transcripts, and things like that in support. We work closely with your student to make sure that we can access their Common Application so that we can match, what they're doing in Common App to what they're doing in Zello. I make it sound like it is this. Kids get really nervous about, matching that information. It takes about 30 seconds, in a completion of one form. So I don't want anybody to panic. That is like a huge step that they need to do. The important part of understanding Zello and sort of who does what and when is, I mention it because it really impacts students who are applying early, right? So if we think about, and I'll get to early action and early decision in the actual application types, I think it's the next slide. But you're looking at students returning. I think they return even earlier, end of August, I think, 24, 25. And so it doesn't really give them a lot of time to get back acclimated in school, jump into their academics, and also sort of, figure out where they're going to apply, what they're going to do, who they're going to ask for teacher recommendations. So we have really messaged juniors this year, since they're coming off of a full year with a teacher, to talk to their teachers about potentially being a recommender for them. They can't do anything official in Common Application or Zello, but they can at least have that conversation, email exchange, sort of a handshake that's going to happen. It's also the place where we will be able, come September 1st, when the district gives us access, upload council recs, send transcripts, and things like that. Where to find it? I said this earlier: Infinite Campus, Message Center, Zello. Next slide. So this is where I was suggesting sort of a little exposure to Zello, getting on campuses early so that you can, your student can figure out, do they want to apply under one of these designations? So early decision, I like to say one and done. You're applying, basically it's your first choice school. I'm not going to read all these, but there is an early decision agreement between the student, the school. I usually sign it, any counselor will sign it, the parent, and also the college or university. The sticky part here, unfortunately, I don't want to bring up money, but it does get back to money. Early decision, it's a binding agreement. So your son or daughter or child will get accepted in December. It's usually mid-December. I think of University of Pennsylvania as a popular example for students applying to our school or applying there from our school. They will find out it's usually December 14th or 15th, and they have about 2 weeks to make the sign and submit a deposit. Unfortunately, I would say 90% of our students are in need of some financial assistance. So if you do early decision, top school, you're going to go, you love it, maybe there's legacy at the school, you'll be making that decision without knowing the cost out of your own pocket. Financial aid won't typically come out till January or February. Early action is similar to early decision with the exception of two areas. It is not a binding agreement, so you can apply early action to as many schools as you want, and it's not a binding agreement. The deadline and early review of your application still happens between, the dates vary from mid-October to mid-November, but you can wait for your financial aid package and then make a more informed decision if finances is a piece that needs to be considered. Regular decision is usually a January 1st deadline. Sometimes some of the more competitive schools, like I think of like a Lehigh, will have sort of a November 30th deadline. And then rolling admissions, schools like Arcadia, Gwynedd Mercy, Chestnut Hill, LaSalle, rolling admission as your application rolls in and your supporting documentation like transcript, SAT scores and things like that, they will, turn out a decision within, they say, 7 to 10 days. Next slide. So I spoke, briefly about sort of where teachers will upload letters of recommendation. Students often ask, parents often ask, how many letters of recommendation, should we secure? And that's really college specific. So I can't give you a definitive. Sometimes colleges will say 2 letters of recommendation, one will be the counselor and one will be the teacher. I know for more heavy science and math-based programs, I'm thinking engineering in particular, some schools will want a teacher in the sciences or in the math, or a science and a math teacher. So there are also some schools who don't require teacher recommendations, but it's optional. So I really lean into, if a student, I talked about, reach, target, and safety schools for students that may not necessarily make the mark in terms of GPA, or maybe their final grade and first marking period was a C. I really encourage students to try to work with their teacher to get a recommendation as just another level of support, for that particular major. And again, specifically for, heavy math and science, programming at the specific college. Counselor, that's just, your child will work with your counselor. If recommendations are required, we will take care of those. We have plenty of students who are working with coaches, working with pastors, working with mentors. This is a different process. Zello only supports a Phila SD email exchange. And so on the Common App under the profile screen, you will see, or the FERPA and recommender screen, there's a space for outside recommenders, and we can certainly step your child through that as well. Next slide. I'm gonna skip through this part with the exception of one of the things on that slide. This is more specific for your child, sign FERPA, admission plan, things like that. That's how, we match Common App to Zello. Application fee waiver, that says every senior is eligible. I just want to sort of create a little caveat that every student in the school district of Philadelphia is eligible for a Common App application fee waiver. For schools that are not common, that don't use the common application, your child will apply directly to that school. And it's up to the school. We have a form that we send to the admissions office, and the school gets to determine. You will see when your child is filling out under the profile tab of Common App, is your child eligible for a Common App fee waiver? And the answer is always yes. And that is not dependent on your income. So all students are eligible. Next slide. SAT dates and deadlines. So all 11th grade students, I guess I shouldn't say all, President Davis, but a large majority of our 11th grade students took the school day SAT on March 25th.
Dr. Soda, not to interrupt you, but we had about 95% of the class take the exam. It was incredible.
Yeah, I knew it was high. Thank you to AP Smith and Mr. Grow, our testing coordinator, who coordinated that. That is a huge feat, especially with it being digital and technology and internet. So that was awesome. So March 25th, they took it in school. And so they should be getting their scores, I would say, March 25th. If they haven't gotten them already, probably in another week or so.
I believe they got released earlier this week on the College Board website.
Okay, well, there you go. There you go. So students will have gotten an email, right? An email that they used, through their College Board account when they were registering to go there and see their scores. It's really important for students, especially 11th grade, to remember their password for College Board, because this is where students will be able to send their scores to colleges. Many schools, I don't know, I'd say about 95, 96% are back to wanting standardized test scores. So that can be the SAT or the ACT. And so, we talk to students about, it might be beneficial for students to take both, see which feels more comfortable. The ACT is a little bit different, or I would say a lot different than the common knowledge SAT of like a reading, excuse me, a reading section and a math section. ACT is sort of sectioned out based on subject. So many students feel that it's more current content based and it feels better. SAT is really an East Coast thing. You'll see if you went to the Midwest, probably from Ohio over, is ACT, and then the West Coast is pretty much SAT. So we do have fee waivers for students, which entitles them to 2 free test administrations at Saturday test sites. So SAT usually is offered on the first Saturday of the month. So if your students are interested in that, if they haven't gotten a fee waiver already, we've been giving out lots of fee waivers to 11th grade students. So have your student, contact their counselor, or I can put my contact information if, you can email me directly. Next slide. Okay. FAFSA and scholarships. This is a hot button topic. You'll have parents say it's the most complex form they've ever filled out, and then I have parents who say no, it was pretty easy. The FAFSA, I'm going to knock on wood, as it stands right now, will open to rising seniors October 1st. But you will need a login. You will need an account because you will be invited by your student to contribute parent information. You'll see that third bullet, identify your contributor. I just put a link there because this is where you would click on if it is a separated household or remarried household, who claims who on the taxes, and it gets pretty complex. And you want to make sure that you're providing the correct information. I can tell you that if it seems off, they will, they will reach out to you. FAFSA will reach out to you. They have a lot of safeguards. I don't even know if that's the right word, but safeguards, and not necessarily, hey, you did this wrong, but hey, you've reported this. Is this accurate? If not, contact us or do whatever. So again, financial aid, we have done in the past a financial aid night with either an area financial aid director, or this past year we had Ron Felder, who works for FIA, which is Pennsylvania's basically umbrella for higher education in the state. Another form you may hear, Ivy League schools, highly competitive schools. Drexel is a school that many students apply to. Will need to complete the CSS profile, which is through the College Board. And honestly, I think creates a better picture of financial sort of situations for families. The FAFSA is just, assets, adjusted gross income, this, and they, spit out a student aid index, whereas CSS profile digs a little bit deeper in terms of, perhaps other expenses more than, just your income tax, shows. Scholarships. Ooh, I forgot that date. That should say 286. So I put the link to Central's counseling page. It's, in my opinion, very information heavy. But if you, across the top, you'll see post-secondary planning. And Ms. Stern and Mrs. Wardlaw, two of our counselors, kind of keep that up to date. We are inundated with scholarships and sort of still are working on sort of a platform that really kind of is one central location. Zello is a good platform, but we're trying to sort of use the website and, have students go in that kind of one direction. So next slide. Right. So we're winding down. I know there's tons of questions, some questions about like, can you expand upon blah, blah, blah. Ms. Jason and President Davis, I know that you're answering. If there's anything, that you both are seeing in the chat that I need to kind of expound upon, I will. So again, this is just Central's website. Just click there. There's information about internships, jobs, events, scholarships, Zello and Common App support, FAFSA resources. But I think that the biggest piece, as we're encouraging juniors, and, I think we still see, juniors are like, oh, I have time for that, or that's, I want to enjoy my summer and then come back. But we really try to step students through, like, this is important. Let's start thinking about it. Again, you can't apply. But it's nice to start the conversation. Because when the students come back in the fall, I think, President Davis, Ms. Chasen, and any other counselor on the line can say, it just seems like you hit the ground running. Again, you're trying to get acclimated, you're trying to apply November 1st, early decision, early action, lots of moving parts. So as I said earlier, there's a couple things that the students can sort of work on. One question we get a lot, which I didn't really mention, extracurricular activities. Do I need a lot of extracurricular activities, right? So quantity versus quality in terms of depth of the activity. And I always err on the side of, and this comes from as a former admissions rep for a small liberal arts school in the area. It is obvious when students in junior year are able to add 25 clubs that they went to once a week, and know that, or not know, question a head scratcher of like, how much did they get out of it versus perhaps 5 activities, clubs, sports, music, where they have sort of grown in terms of leadership from 9th to 12th grade, and have really developed communication skills, leadership skills, self-advocacy skills, community building. And I know that is not the case for sort of everyone, but I think that the standard still exists, depth versus sort of quantity. So we like to talk to students about like, hey, what are you doing this summer? And, how can you kind of build your resume?
Dr. Soda, can I build on that briefly?
Sure.
I would also just kind of connect the dots there also with course selection, right? Students have already picked their classes for the upcoming year. But if you're a parent of a current 9th grader or 10th grader, we want to dispel the myth that students need to load their roster with AP courses or all of the hardest ones. We always say to ninth graders, we don't want you worrying about your college applications just yet. But as students move through the grade level, it becomes really important for them to start to think about what their interests are academically, right? Maybe they want to try to take an honors or AP level literature class or science class or math class. You do not have to do everything to get into some of the most competitive schools. And I think there's a lot of benefits from helping our young people be really intentional about both the extracurriculars and the courses that they want to choose at Central.
And just to piggyback off what President Davis just said, we have seen an uptick this year of sort of military enrollment. Trade schools have become, trade schools are offering, full scholarships for 2-year commitment to work, which is appealing for some students, especially for some students that may not necessarily be happy, with their grades or, their GPA. And as I say, every year, community college is doing amazing things to attract students in terms of, free to, through this, various scholarships and grants. Um, our students from Central, they know that they are well equipped, that they can handle sort of the rigor and the transition. And so that can be a financial option or a more feasible financial option for some families. And so we don't hesitate to sort of offer those programs as well. So next slide, Esther, I think I'm close to being done. To-do items, just to reiterate, you can work on creating your Common App account after August 1st, but that doesn't mean you can't go out to Common App and just see, the different areas that will need to be complete. In the fall, your student and counselor will be matching Zello and Common Application. That allows us to see what your student's doing on Common Application and or they can see what we're doing on the side of Zello in terms of transcripts being sent, fee waivers being, completed and things like that. And then I just put a link there for instructions on Zello steps. This information was actually shared with students as we were working with them around some required Zello tasks that the state looks at for our 11th grade in terms of that post-secondary planning. So your child should be able to sort of talk to you about that, or you can click here and see kind of some of the work that we're doing there. Go ahead, Esther. All right. Well, I appreciate your time. I know this is a lot of information, thrown at you. Oftentimes after this presentation, I get tons of emails. Keep those coming. And I can connect you with your child's counselor. And are there any, Miss Jason or President Davis, any questions to talk more about this or talk more
Yeah,
about that?
Dr. Soda, there was one question about what goes into counselor letters, and I thought maybe you could just speak to that.
Oh, yeah, certainly. So counselor letters vary, or can vary, let me say that. Some colleges are particular about, like I'm going to use a Lehigh and their engineering program, right? Uber competitive. So they want to know in the letter how Kate Davis performed in her math classes. What was the highest level of math? And not necessarily because they can see it on the transcript, but how did Kate Davis fare as it related to the topic, as it related to other students, as it related to, advocating for themselves, tutoring, how did they overcome obstacles, things like that. And so that's sort of one type. I know another type, which is a little bit more sensitive. Let's say your child came to Central and for whatever reason experienced a medical issue that may have kept them out of school, a mental health concern, crisis that kept them out of school. We can't assume that they're returning to school and that everything's going to be okay. So what I like to do in particular, and I know Ms. Chasen does the same as well as other counselors, is we use the letter of recommendation because oftentimes we know those students and we know their situation because we're partnering with the nurse, we're partnering with you as their parent, we're partnering with the student administrative team to really kind of paint a picture of perhaps why in 10th grade there was a dip, right? So the transcript looks like this, you know, and so it just helps to illuminate. Do I think that it makes an admission decision yes versus no based on my letter? But I do think that it helps kids, helps students who may be perhaps a little under the GPA or a little under the SAT score to get a nod of, okay, well, this is a situation that they couldn't help. And so let's take this into consideration. And for students who, you know, I just met with a student about college stuff the other, you know, college stuff, they were doing military, that fell through, whatever. So it's kind of a late request for a letter of recommendation. I don't know the student all that well. So we do have a general sort of letter where I pull out the student's strengths and I talk about Central and how the student's qualified as being accepted. And I'm pretty sure counselors do things a little differently, but we kind of step from the lens of, you know, how do we best position the student or paint a true picture of the student that we're recommending. So it really is dependent on a couple factors in terms of what the student needs and what the school's looking for. Well, I do appreciate everyone taking the time to be here. Miss Chasen, you're a rock star, and I appreciate you managing the chat. President Davis, I appreciate your input. I saw Mr. Myrick. Thanks for the opportunity. And Esther, if you get parent, I'm going to put my email in the chat. If anybody wants to reach out to me directly, and I can, you know, forward you to the right person. I hope everyone has a great night. Good luck with the process, and we're here to support.
Thanks, Dr. Soda.
Thank
All
you.
right, and so we will move forward with our meeting agenda. President Davis?
Thanks, Dr. Soda. I did see one parent's hand. I don't know if Dr. Soda has to hop off. Maybe I could answer, Mr. Myrick, if there was a pressing question.
Hi, I did have a question. There was something in the chat about, you know, do colleges know how, you know, how rigorous Central is and kind of like the lack of grade inflation, just because, you know, schools have different flavors. So I was just wondering if you could speak to that question.
Sure, I'll try. I do think that schools that are closer to Central, right, like our Philly-based schools, I have had to do a little bit more explaining as we get further out from Philadelphia. Our school profile, which is available also on centralhigh.net, I feel does a good job. You know, we speak about, you know, where SAT falls, we speak about AP scores and IB scores. And, you know, I always include, and I think most counselors do, you know, the fact that students have to apply to get into Central. But the other side of that coin is, you know, we have a weighted GPA and an unweighted GPA. And so because of the rigor of our classes, and this is a much longer conversation, and I would certainly email a blurb, but you know, our classes are weighted based on if students are taking an honors level class, you know, they get more weight based on, you know, how they score. I do know that most of our competitive schools, I'm going to talk about Drexel and Penn and Lehigh and the Ivies, will create their own weighted system, right, for every student that applies there. So there is some sort of flexing at the school level because our highest weighted GPA is a 4.60. And maybe Ms. Jason, you can help me sort of draft a blurb for parents to understand, you know, what the weight is and all that stuff. But, you know, you're at Lower Merion and they have a 5.2 weighted scale based on their students taking upper level classes. So it wouldn't be fair for a UPenn to view our student at a 4.6 as the highest and Lower Merion. So schools do take our transcript and sort of break it down, but we do our best to really push out who we are and how you know, the uniqueness of us in such a large school district. Not sure that answers your question, Ms. Soma, but I can elaborate in an email moving
Dr.
forward.
Soda, I think you did a great job. And the only other thing I'll add to that is around class rank and the reasons why we don't publicize class rank, which is a question we get every single year. And it's because exactly what Dr. Soda was saying with the weighting of the GPAs and the difference between a top ranked student and student who might be number 100 in a class can be a tenth of a point of a GPA, which to an admissions representative less familiar with our school might not understand that. So we absolutely do what we can to provide context that gives our students a fair shot. Thanks, Dr. Soda. We really appreciate that.
Thank you,
And Ms.
everyone.
Chasen. And we know that this topic's really important and the questions come all across the year. And I did see it shared a couple times in the chat that this presentation will be shared. So we will make sure that it gets out to everybody. Thanks, Doc. Okay, Esther, I'm gonna change gears if that's okay. Perfect. Okay, so my slides are brief. Hello, everybody. A happy Wednesday night. Happy April meeting. We just have a few brief slides to update on the school's behalf. This slide should look familiar. It's just the upcoming roughly month until the next home and school meeting at a glance, some of the things that are happening school-wide. I added that Google QR code on the upper right-hand corner, and you're also going to see it on the next slide as well. That leads you to the Central High School shared Google spreadsheet calendar. It's on the homepage of our website as well. Students and teachers look at this resource a lot more than parents do, but it's open to everybody. This shows you column by column some of what are the events happening at the school, what's happening in the auditorium, what's happening in our conference center, what's happening with extracurriculars. Anything important is listed there. And so if you're curious, it's a publicly shared Google sheet that you can log on to see. Term 4, the spring term, is always the busiest month at Central. We have a lot of big events, and I know that they're going to be touched on the upcoming class slides. So we'll just move on to the next slide, please. Can you click one more, and then we'll go back to this? I think it got out of order. Yeah, okay. So here's the QR code on the bottom right-hand corner. I wanted to just make sure that all parents logged on are aware of some of the upcoming examinations happening at Central. These are not in chronological order, but they're important to be familiar with. So the Keystone exams, these are the Pennsylvania standardized exams, are beginning in less than a month. These are primarily for students in 9th and 10th grade. But if you have a student who has not tested or did not score a proficient or advanced level test, we do invite them to test again. So if you are a 9th grade parent and your child took Algebra 1 in middle school and sat for the Algebra Keystone exam and received a score of proficient or advanced, they do not need to test again at Central. If your child has never taken the Algebra Keystone exam, there are 2 modules for each of these keystones, and we begin on Monday, May 11th. The calendar shows which modules we're doing on each day, 1 module per day. Our 9th grade students all take biology. We don't have any 9th graders who've come in with Keystone biology scores. And then we hold the Literature Keystone exam for 10th grade students. And again, that is for 99.9% of 10th graders. Maybe we get one student who is a transfer 10th grader who took it at a charter school in 9th grade, but mostly every single 10th grade student. During our Keystone exams, we follow our testing bell schedule, which is the same bell schedule we used less than a month ago for the 11th grade SAT. So that is testing till roughly 11:15 in the morning, and then we have 30-minute class periods. Central High School receives a score, as do all schools in the school district of Philadelphia, having to do with the percentage of our students who score proficient or advanced. That is why students who haven't yet reached this milestone are invited year over year to test. In Pennsylvania, all students also have to meet what we call Act 158 pathways. And there are a number of different ways to do that, but it's a requirement for graduation. Pathways 1 and 2 are connected to performance on Keystone exams. And if you have any questions about that, ask your student or a counselor or any one of the administrators. We have 29 advanced placement courses at Central High School, and every student enrolled in an AP course takes the AP exam that begins in May. This schedule is set by the College Board. It's publicly available. If you just Google AP testing 2026, you can see when every single student in all of the United States who's taking AP classes are taking the exams. We are bound to that schedule. We test at Central High School, and some of our students, believe it or not, will travel up on the avenue to LaSalle University and sit for an exam. They're very generous with their building space and allow us to use some classrooms there for testing. If we have any parents logged on whose 11th or 12th grader is in the IB diploma program, you know that IB diploma exams are coming up. That is for roughly 120 students in our school, not the majority, but they are very intense examinations that students have prepared for across the year. Last but not least, all students at Central High School participate in final exams, just like midterms. The dates are there below. The only exception to that is that students in AP classes or IB exams don't take an IB classes, don't take an additional final exam. There will be a letter shared with all of the dates as well, but I just wanted to preview it. Esther, can you please go back one slide? I was talking momentarily about the goals for standardized exams. We also have a school-based goal around student attendance. And this is a graph that shows student attendance within each month. Each month is its own point on this chart, and showing what percentage of our student body is meeting the goal of attending school 90% or more days. The line that you should be looking at is the green line. That's the line for this year. And last year was the yellow line. And so this one doesn't have April yet. We just has the month of March, but you can see in March we were slightly below where we were the year before that. The takeaway is just to know that attendance at the end of the year still matters, right? We know that it's beautiful outside. There might be longer weekends. You know, kids might say, please let me stay home. Please let me stay home. We appreciate that Dr. Watlington and the School District of Philadelphia definitely expect students to come to school every single day. That's part of the reason why we're seeing some calendar shifts for the upcoming year. But please know that our school is held accountable for student attendance, and thank you for sending in absence notes when your students are absent for reasons that are excusable. 2 slides, please, Esther. Wonderful. This is a brief reminder about community service. The upcoming deadline school-wide is just over a month away, May 16th. All community service is submitted on your student's Google Classroom. There is a reflection that's also an assignment that's a part of this requirement. And as you can see at the bottom, community service is a credited course on every student's transcript. It counts as a half credit within the humanities requirement for each year. Another frequently asked question that we begin to receive at this time of the year is, if my child's already completed their community service, can they begin their community service for next year? We say yes, once it's the summertime. So after June 12th, they can begin for the upcoming school year. Next slide. All right, I believe this is the last one. I'm not going to take too much time to speak on these points because I know they're going to be touched on by the class representatives. But this Friday, April 17th, we have a half day. We will have a few hundred students, some members of our alumni community, some teachers take part in our 5K fun run, which is a legitimate 5K timed around the central campus, which is really exciting. That's going to start in the morning on our patio. We have our sophomore class having their 10th grade dance, the Soft Hop, taking place next week. Mr. Martin, the class sponsor, has been doing an incredible job of getting us students excited and signed up for this fun dance. And then last but not least, we have our Central Night at the Phillies game, which is always a lot of fun to see 3 or 4 complete sections filled with hundreds of Central High School students. We always have a member of our faculty who throws out one of the first pitches. And so if you are a baseball fan, we hope to see you there. I think that's my last slide, Esther.
Great, thank you. Oh, hit the wrong button. Okay.
Thank you so much.
All right. I think next up we just have some home and school updates. If my computer decides to load at any time. There you go. So I know the first one is you may have received communication through parent portal or seen a text message or seen something on the school district's website that the Philly School Experience Survey is out. That is a survey that goes out every spring. It's an annual survey that students can respond to, parents can respond to, school staff, administrators. So they're trying to get a full kind of picture from all of the different stakeholder groups. And those responses all kind of get brought together for a specific school, and the data result is shared back. It's available for everyone to actually see the data on the school district's website. But we have to meet a certain threshold of responses in order for the data to be publicized, which we did not meet that threshold for the parents group last year. So this is my plea to all the parents on here and all your friends. We need to get parent responses of this survey so that we get really good, meaningful feedback to both the school, President Davis, and the school district. I took my survey today. It took about 10 minutes. They do raffle off a $25 or several $25 gift cards to parents, and you can opt into that or not. If you do have kids at multiple schools, we do ask that you complete it for each student. And just indicate what school they go to at the beginning. It is anonymous. And the only thing is if you enter the raffle, you do give some information so that they can know, but I don't think it's tied directly to your survey responses. It's like a totally different form, not done at the same time. So please, please, please make sure you do this. If you go to phillasd.org/PSES, it'll take you to the Philly School Experience page that has all this information about it. And then there's like a button to click so that you actually complete the survey. The other thing is Teacher Appreciation Week is coming up May 4th through the 8th. May 8th is going to be a fun packed day because we also have the Phillies game that day. But we are going to be doing a staff appreciation lunch. It is a half day for students. So that does allow there to be kind of like a lunch window for teachers to come down and share in a lunch that the home and school provides. This is one of the things, if you donate or support the home and school through spirit wear sales or anything like that, this is one of the things that we are able to fund for. The lunch itself, we're hoping to provide lunch from 11 to about 12:30 for staff to come grab their food and sit down and eat if they'd like to sit in the wrestling gym. But if you can help between 10 to 1:30 or any time within that window, please fill out this form and let us know. And so that way we have enough support to get this all set up, give out the food, and get cleaned up. It's a great time to just like say thank you to teachers and get to meet them in a less formal kind of, like, I know report card conferences and back to school night is our main opportunities to do so, but this is kind of like festive opportunity just to chat with them. So really welcome anyone who can help for any time during that window. Yes, and last year we did pita chip, which is like Mediterranean style food, and people absolutely loved it. So we're going to do it again this year. All right. Nina and Alan aren't able to weren't able to join our meeting today, so I'll just go through the treasurer's report. Our balance as of March 1st is $46,190. We did have donations come in $300. Just a reminder, you can always go to centralhsa.org and you'll see a PayPal button there to donate to us to help support with some of these things that we paid for. So the IB department grant got paid out in $2,000 for their special events that they do with the IB students. We also have a long-standing kind of fund for the JV teams to buy new uniforms. So we were able to do the baseball uniforms recently, and there's always our miscellaneous bank fees. Just kind of spoke on that PayPal donation that you can do. These are all of those things that we fund every year. So it's really helpful if people can help support these different things that the Home and School helps the school with. All right. Now I don't know if Terry's available. Terry, are you on? I know she's multitasking.
I think Central's.
Sorry.
Hi,
Hi, I'm on.
Okay.
Kind of. I was just, of course, speaking on my other meeting.
Timing.
Yeah. So we had this past Saturday was we did the 2026 Central Spring Cleanup as part of the Philly Spring Cleanup city-wide initiative. There we had 51 students, three parents / caregivers, 4 community members that signed up via the city's Philly Spring Cleanup, all came out to help. And that picture in the corner with the trash truck was the first pickup. There were additional pickups, so we were able to clear a lot of yard waste, down branches, trees, vines off the building and fences, just in general trash and leaves and things around the school. So it's always a great event, and Mr. Myrick was there as our lead staff representative. Thank you so much for his help. We are potentially planning another day for maybe to do a planting day or a couple of other projects to try to one, take advantage of the spring weather, and also to provide another opportunity for students to gain some community service hours prior to May 16th, which is the due date. And to make that happen, I need to bring up future committee leadership so that anyone that's interested in the beautification committee or helping to run cleanups or whatever your interest is, I would love to start communicating with a group that would like to chair, co-chair, quadruple chair is not an issue as long as we're coordinating and passing along institutional knowledge, because I will be graduating out of Central this year with my 285. So please email me with interest for spring projects, but also for interest in moving the committee forward into next school year. That's it.
Thanks, Terry. All right, next we'll have our class updates. Debbie?
Hello. Okay. First of all, thanks everyone for everything you shared earlier. So first we have lawn signs. I know Nina stepped in and was helping with this, so I thank her so much for that.